Well, again, thank you, Diego and Farmer Veteran Coalition for having us. We've come a long direction here. This is the fourth part of our 4-part webinar series at Winning at Risk Management. It's been quite the ride, and so now we get to talk about a commodity and industry that's real passionate in my heart, and most importantly, agriculture, but also specifically in the livestock side. So great opportunity to come for you today. My name is Ethan Bredemeyer. We also have Kim Harris, Tom Blinn, and Brandon McDonald as well on the call. Thank you again for joining us. We're going to get started. Have just a few quick questions I want to launch real fast. If you would please answer those. The most important one, I guess you can say the most important one is tell us what your favorite type of steak is. And maybe you're not a steak fan, but I figured it'd be important here whenever we're talking on the livestock side. So we got filet, T-bone, porterhouse, ribeye, sirloin, your New York or Kansas City strip. If you do not like steak or if you just like a hamburger or something like that, you can answer that one as well. And then have you attended one of the sessions before, whether that's one of the Winning at Risk Management series or our Crop Insurance 101 webinar or both of those? And then that last question is what type of livestock are you mostly in? That's really the most important one because it's going to highlight what we're going to talk about majority of the day. And I can see, I think all 4 have responded. Thank you very much. Y'all are great students. Y'all get an A+. Great students there. We'll end that. And I'll share the results real quick. We can see that looks like ribeye steak. We had 50% answer that one. Is that what you were thinking, Kim? What's your favorite steak?
I'm right there with the ribeyes, although filet mignon is that's close. They run neck and neck. Not quite a steak though.
It's if the steak's good and sometimes if somebody else is buying it too, it makes it that much sweeter as well.
If someone else is fixing it, yeah.
That's exactly right. So half of us have attended one of the sessions before. Thank you again for joining. And in the other half, y'all are new, so welcome. Thank you again for coming. And then looks like 100% of us are talking about beef cattle, my type of people. I grew up on a farm and ranch out in West Texas, and so we run about 100 Angus cross cows and have some shorthorns that we play in the show side with. So awesome, looks great. Thank you again for answering those. And like I said, we're going to go through this. I think the livestock programs are something that, and Kim can iterate on this, I think as the further and further we see the importance of risk management from an agricultural side, and as agriculture continues to progress, I think we could give this presentation in 10 years and it's going to be totally different than what we're seeing today. Maybe the same, but I think there's a lot of neat things that are coming, hopefully in the livestock side, like I said, as risk management continues to grow and improve. So like I said, I think I will give you a good baseline of where we're at now, but I think this industry is continuing to evolve from a risk management perspective. With that, we'll get started. So a little bit about us. We are based in College Station, Texas, and we're primarily an agricultural, economic, and insurance consulting firm. So our primary task is improving on, developing, and building up crop insurance programs for federal as well as private companies. And so like I said, that's our primary interest. We also do risk management analysis for agricultural companies as well as do risk management education, such as what we're doing today. Y'all have heard about the Farmer Veteran Coalition. Great individuals. Diego did a great job on the presentation. And like I said, they've been a true honor to work with throughout this process and hopefully continue in the future. And then the USDA Risk Management Agency is who funds this webinar series as well as our Crop Insurance 101. And we'll talk a little more about the places we've gone and things that we've done so far and things that are to come. But Bill, Chola, and Brian are great resources there at USDA RMA. They've been a pleasure to work with, and thank them again for their partnership in this risk management educational series. Also, I want to say before we get started, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Kim and Tom and Brandon are monitoring that, and we'll either answer questions outrightly or say, hey, we'll come to that here shortly. Or like I said, any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. And we'll go from there. Quick summary for our guys who have not been to our Crop Insurance 101 or any of the series yet. And again, Diego mentioned these are all published on the Farmer Veteran Coalition YouTube channel, and he can send that link for those if you want to catch up on something or refresh your brain on something. But I'll give you a quick 30,000 foot approach on our Crop Insurance 101. We know farming is a very risky business. And when we talk on the livestock side, it's my great granddad said that if you didn't want to lose cattle, you don't need to own them, because you're going to lose one eventually, no matter how hard you try. But like I said, there's a lot of risk that's involved. Risk is really made up of severity and frequency. And when we talk about managing risk, there's three primary ways. We can reduce the severity, we can reduce the frequency, or we can transfer a portion of the risk over to another entity, such as a crop insurance company, through crop insurance. And also, I will say, when I talk about crop insurance, we're talking livestock, we're talking about other commodities. Sometimes that crop insurance is just I want to make sure that whenever I say crop insurance, it's involved livestock and commodities as well. But going back to that same example, so how do we mitigate this risk? It's really hard to tell. It's sometimes really hard to tell the lightning to not come, and that thunderstorm not to come, or hurricane not to come, or that severe blizzard we have up and to not hit, because we're calving at that point in time. So it's really hard to tell those natural things to stop or not come in my area. And so that leaves us with that third option of transferring a portion of the risk. Again, crop insurance, we have federal programs as well as private programs. Today, we're going to primarily highlight the federal side. However, we will touch on just a few different sides that are available on the private side. Of course, all these programs are administered by private insurance companies. However, on the federal side, they're backed and premium subsidized by the federal government, which helps out our farmers and ranchers a lot. When we look at insurance plans, there's four primary buckets that we can put them in. You have what happens on your operation or our individual base, what happens in your general area, so that's your area base. There's a quasi between those two. We call that a hybrid area individual. And then our parametric index base. So when we talk about pasture, rangeland, and forage, or apiculture, we're looking at the PRF side. That's what we're looking at there on a parametric index or rainfall base is what goes in that category. So our objectives today is to summarize the benefits provided for veteran farmers and ranchers, discuss the different components and characteristics to our livestock programs that we have available currently, such as dairy revenue protection, livestock gross margin, and livestock risk protection. I'll also state here that, like for dairy revenue, since we have a lot of our guys are covering beef cattle, I will just touch on the high points there so we can continue to move on and go to relevant information for the guys who we have on today. If you are raising on a dairy operation, please feel free to put that in the chat and let me know, and I'll slow down on that side briefly. But those are going to be the three primary subjects that we're going to talk about, as well as we're going to highlight some PRF whole farm and then, like I said, some other programs that are out there. And then we're going to provide some general examples of how these programs operate. So to our guys who have been here before, y'all have seen these slides. But again, we feel like sometimes it's best to learn whenever you continue to see it in front of you. Repetition is usually key in learning. So how do I know if I qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher? Well, I must be an individual who served in the military, including the reserve components, and were discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. And then I must qualify under this, what I call a three-tiered approach. So have I operated a farm and ranch before? If I have, then I need to go to my second question. If I have not, I qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher. All right, question number two, for those who have operated a farm and ranch, have you operated that farm and ranch for more than 5 years? If you have, we got to drop down to question three. If not, you qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher. So question three, did I obtain veteran status during the most recent 5-year period? If I have, then I still qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher. If I have not, I do not qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher. And so, like I said, three-tier approach: those who have not operated a farm and ranch, those who have for less than 5 years, or those that have operated it for more than 5 years. You obtained your veteran status during the most recent 5-year period. That's our three-tier approach as far as qualifications concerned. On our businesses, if you're partners with others, they all must qualify as a veteran farmer and rancher as well in order for that business to qualify. However, a spouse, my spouse and I are partners on the operation, which I would think you would be. The spouse she does not, or he does not have to be a veteran farmer and rancher in order for you to still qualify. Benefits. So the administrative fee on our catastrophic coverage and our buy-up coverage levels, you're exempt and waived from those fees. There's an additional 10% premium subsidy for buy-up policies. And so that's a great savings there. You have the opportunity to use a previous producer's production history records, as long as you were active in that operation and the producer allows you and gives you the permission to utilize those records. And then we talk about yield adjustment. We mainly highlight that when we're talking like APH programs, and we won't talk about that in this series, but like revenue protection and yield protection, record-based programs, yield adjustment, which allows us to use, instead of, if you have a bad year, you get to use 60% of the transitional yield. As a veteran farmer and rancher, you get to use 80% of that transitional yield. So a lot of great benefits out there. Those are the ones we wanted to highlight. And like I said, great opportunities that are available for those that qualify. Beginning farmer and rancher, we'll touch on this, are the same exact benefits that we see for our veterans. The qualifications are slightly different, of course. You must have operated a farm and ranch for no more than 5 crop years, or when we talk about whole farm revenue protection, that's 10 crop years. And in those crop years, you basically get waived from counting crop years that you were under 18, enrolled in post-secondary studies, or were in active duty in the U.S. military. And so I know a lot of our veteran farmers ranchers also qualify as beginning. However, I can see a lot of different variations. So I want to highlight this one as beginning farmer and ranchers. Like I said, same exact benefits. Qualifications we're looking slightly different on, but no more than 5 crop years that are, I guess, countable crop years. And like I said, those that don't count are if you're under 18 at a different university or college, and then we're in active duty. And again, same thing, if you have businesses, they must all qualify to be beginning farmers and ranchers in order for you to get the benefits there. All right, limited resource farmer and rancher, those who have direct or indirect gross farm sales less than the current index value from the last 2 years, and then your household income is at or below the poverty level for a family of 4, or less than 50% of the county median household income for the last 2 years. That's always I always think it's a little more challenging thing to really assess, but USDA has a great determination tool that you can utilize. There's a link there provided. Go to that, fill out whatever is applicable, and it does a great job telling if you qualify or not under limited resource farmer and rancher. If you do qualify, there's a lot of great financial and technical assistance out there and that USDA has for you. With that, I think I will release a second poll question quickly. So do you qualify as a beginning farmer and rancher, veteran farmer and rancher, limited resource, or more than one above, or do you still not have any idea if you qualify or not? Give you just a few seconds to highlight that. Kim, do we have any questions in the chat that we need to answer?
I don't see any questions, Ethan. I think Kim had some issues with her power, so she's trying to get back on, but not here at the moment.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that. And I'll end the poll here, and I'll share our results. So we have quite a few beginning and veteran farmers and ranchers, and then more than one above. Like I said, thank you again I always like to start our presentations, and I think I didn't do that today, but thank you to our veterans for your service and everything you do for our country. It's much greatly appreciated on this side of the fence, that's for sure. All right, I'll stop sharing that, and we'll start rolling into our livestock programs. So some things I wanted to highlight, and I know some of us who have been active in our previous webinar series, we talked about micro farm and whole farm revenue protection. That was part 1. And we can see I put up the insurance experience there from the last commodity year, which was 2022. We can see these are great programs that livestock are eligible to be included in. I'm not going to go in a whole lot of detail. We'll cover the high points on these programs briefly. But this is something that's available in all 50 states, and something that, especially if you have other commodities, if you're raising bees, or you have a vegetable garden or orchard, whatever the case may be, there's a lot, or you have, maybe you run cattle and also have goats or chickens and have eggs, and you take the meat from the chickens, and then you also have goats and cattle as well. Like I said, there's a great, and we'll highlight those points, but you get to bundle all your commodities up under one policy under these two programs. Rainfall index programs, especially for our beef cattle guys, this is great. PRF, also our sheep and goats and anything that grazes out in pasture. It's a rainfall index. Again, we'll highlight that. Apiculture has a very similar program for our beekeepers. And like I said, again, put the insurance experience there, and we'll touch on those. Apiculture and PRF we highlighted in part 2 of the webinar series. And so, like I said, go back to those Farmer Veteran Coalition YouTube channel. We can watch part 1 and part 2 to go further in detail on those. And again, we'll highlight those here shortly as well. Today, we're going to talk about these 3 major federal programs. So our dairy revenue protection, again, like I said, if we had any dairy cattle guys that are on the call, please let us know. And we'll go a little more in detail on that, but we'll probably touch on the high points. Livestock gross margin, popular program as well, and then livestock risk protection. We can see that's probably the bigger one overall, but we're covering a lot of different commodities under that one for our cattle and also for our hogs. And so that's the insurance experience there. Again, I told you I was going to highlight whole farm and micro farm. So it's basically a safety net covering all the commodities under one policy. So your cattle are included under it. If you raise chickens, again, like I said, if you're growing peaches or have vegetables going on, Christmas trees, I believe, is included. It covers a wide swath of commodities. There is animal products are limited to $2 million in expected revenue. If you have more than that, it's capped off at $2 million. And then our exhibition animals and our pets, of course, are not eligible for whole farm, just due to there's reason behind that. But of course, we're looking at actual production and what we're producing, and not for our pets or our animals that we're using for show or exhibition purposes. You can buy whole farm with other buy-up federal policies. If we're electing whole farm. Micro farm is, I would like to say, a more streamlined approach of whole farm for our guys. Like I said, not quite the paperwork that's included as whole farm is, but the difference is you cannot buy other federal policies if you elect micro farm. And then your commodity count, there's a calculation for whole farm. For micro farm, you're automatically eligible under that, but whole farm, there's a calculation to calculate your commodity count, and it must exceed 3 in order to be eligible for the 80 or 85% coverage levels. You still qualify, you just won't have those levels. It's between 50 and 75% instead. All right, so our rainfall index, we have PRF and apiculture. There's also an annual forage as well. That's a lot for our row crop guys. PRF is the primary one, and then, like I said, apiculture for our beekeepers. Basically, it provides coverage for a lack of rainfall during a given time or in a given area during a given time. So they're in 2-month intervals. So we have January, February, March, April, May, et cetera, and so forth. And you must elect 2 of the 2-month intervals as long as the month doesn't overlap. So I can elect January and February interval and then March and April interval. Rainfall index is based. This is the biggest thing I want to highlight on PRF is that the values are based on what happened or what is collected by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Climate Prediction Center. And they have different places out there that calculate rainfall and take what poured on that in that grid, what fell on the grid. There's the right word that I was thinking of. And so necessarily it may have rained 3 inches on your farm, or it may have rained 1 inch on your farm. That is not really reflective of what the PRF program is looking at. They do align. Of course, you think, like I said, if your area gets 1/2 an inch, you're probably going to get around 1/2 an inch. So it does the best job for that grid area. But like I said, if something happened, there's a lot of variability there that could occur. But like I said, the biggest thing is even though it rained 5 inches on your farm doesn't necessarily mean that's what's actually calculated for the program. Producer again elects 2 intervals. We talk about percent of value for each of those intervals. You elect a productivity factor, your coverage level, and then number of acres that you're insuring for PRF or number of colonies for apiculture. Like I said, we highlight more of this in that part 2 of that series. And essentially these different elections that we talk about, there's a lot of flexibility. We know that especially on our livestock side, depending on what you're running, what type of animals you're running, depending on if your pastures are improved, if they're not improved, a lot of different things can depend operation by operation. And so these rainfall indexes have a great job, PRF and apiculture as well on the B side. I do a great job providing the flexibility to do what's accurate and reflective on your operation. All right, livestock programs. I'm going to touch on some other things that are out there, other programs that are out there. From our private side, there are private mortality coverage. We see this a lot in like higher end breeding stock. And also I know from the exhibition side, like a lot of show animals sometimes are insured under that, or like we think about, I know the Preakness happened a few weeks ago. We talk about, horses that have a lot of capability, whatever the purpose is. And then, like I said, breeding stock as well. So there is mortality coverage available. And then there's also livestock liability. Also, I would say your state laws, you need to be aware of what is safeguarded or not safeguarded and protected underneath your state laws. I know Texas has been having a bill circulate talking about liability due to livestock, but essentially somebody out comes your farm or whatever the case may be, and somehow your bull gets out and your bull gets mad at the person's car and puts a dent in the car, or like I said, whatever might happen, if anything from having hired help helping you out and a animal running them over or anything, bad things that we don't want to think about that happen but could possibly occur. There are programs available that protects the liability due to the livestock that causes injury to others or their property. The Farm Service Agency does a great job. There's 3 main programs that they have. ELAP, the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish. I know I learned a little more about this program last year whenever we had such a dry year, especially out back at home in West Texas and needed hay. And so I know that program, I believe, helped pay for some of the transportation cost of getting forages to places to make sure your livestock are fed. They cover losses due to disease and certain weather events. That's all applicable by what is decided by the USDA secretary. And so Farm Service Agency has a great fact sheet available that you can read further about that, but ELAP's a great program. Livestock Forage Disaster Program, that's covering the grazed forage also on your operation, as well as if you run cattle or whatever animal it is on federal agency rangelands and dry conditions or whatever the case may be, there is some assistance there to help. If like I said, dry conditions occur, we saw that last year, and you gotta do something with your animals or feed them supplemental forage, there is assistance there. Our livestock indemnity program, it provides benefits for livestock deaths that are in excess of what's typical mortality that we see on our operations. All of that has to be due to naturally occurring events. So I know back out in the western region states, like the reintroduction of the wolf has happened, and I know a lot of producers out there have been concerned about the reintroduction of the wolf. If these wolves are going to kill and cause an increase in their livestock deaths, this is something the livestock indemnity program is going to help protect you from, and other wild cases that we might see that could possibly occur. Again, Farm Service Agency has a great fact sheets on all these different programs. We can touch on some of the highlighted topics. I'm not going to say I personally know quite as much in depth on these, but we can answer and get you to the right information and the right resources for what are available by the Farm Service Agency. Flipping back to our federal side that are administered by the Risk Management Agency, so RMA, these policies are designed to basically protect you against unexpected declines in revenue. So we're looking at price. Declines in price is what we're primarily covering at this time. These policies do not cover death, loss, or destruction of the livestock or milk whenever we talk about DRP. And again, we talk about DRP for our milk and milk products, livestock gross margin for our cattle, dairy, and swine, and then livestock risk protection for our fed cattle, feeder cattle, and swine. These are the programs that are available currently. Again, they're covering a decline in price. However, I will say here in the upcoming, starting in the 2024 commodity year, there's going to be a program coming out that covers yield and price for beef calves. It'll be for our cow-calf producers on the beef cattle side. That's coming out soon. So just give you a heads up on what's coming down the pipeline, but it will be a program, again, like I said, covers yield and price. And like I said, I think as the years continue and we see the livestock side continue to grow and the risk management side, 10 years from now, this presentation can be totally different. So when we look at this, DRP top states, of course, are our big dairy states. California, Wisconsin, and Texas are your big top three. Idaho also has above $1 billion in liability covered by DRP. Livestock gross margin, Iowa, that's a lot of hogs that we see up there in Iowa that are covered under LGM. Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Indiana round up your top 5 there. I took LGM and broke it out by commodity because I was interested in seeing the states. And again, like I said, swine is a primary up there for LGM, as well as dairy cattle, and then our beef cattle round up the top 3 there. LRP, our top states, again, due to the swine and cattle combination in Iowa, we see Iowa taking number 1 in liability, and then the great state of Texas, as well as Nebraska, Minnesota, and Oklahoma round up our top 5 as far as liability for livestock risk protection. And then those top commodities over there on the right-hand side, feeder cattle, swine, and fed cattle are how that's ordered by liability. All right, again, are there any questions that we see? Brandon, Tom, we good so far?
We tried to answer the question that popped up, and we don't see any others at the moment.
Cool, awesome, sounds good. Well, we'll keep blazing through. I'm guessing from hearing that, I think our dairy side, like I said, I'm going to touch on the high points here, but keep rolling on due to the applicability of the guys we have online. But dairy revenue protection is basically covers decline in quarterly revenue from our milk sales. So we're looking at prices based on the milk futures. Coverage is in 5% increments from 80 to 95%. This is a little like I said, our APH programs, we're looking at 50 to 85%. A lot of the livestock side, it's a little higher on these perspectives due to being a price-based coverage. The insured selects a 3-month quarter period, and then all the other applicable pricing components, milk production, your coverage level, and then a protection factor as well. It's based on USDA NAS milk production records, as well as our AMS monthly average prices, and then looks a lot of these programs look at the futures market that we have available. And then the other thing I want to highlight when we cover across these other programs is that like DRP, they release it on a given day during a business day, and then that is good until 9 a.m. the next business day or on Sunday. So if they release them on Friday, that date is good until Sunday at 9 a.m. And a lot of these programs are very similar to that, but they're continuously updating on when you elect coverage. So milk production, we're looking at there's a milk marketings and then declared milk production. So basically, if the milk marketings, which is what I sold during that period, are greater or equal to 85% of what I thought I would produce, I'm going to use what I produced. If not, we use the milk marketings divided by 85%. There's 2 primary pricing options. We have class pricing option that's based solely on our milk prices for class 3 and class 4. And then there's also a component pricing option. So if we're looking at other different dairy products, they have a price for butter, fat, proteins, other solids, and non-fat solids, and you get to declare those different tests and components. And we talk about protection factor as well. Essentially, it's a pretty relatively straightforward calculation. So we look at that milk marketings, and then we're going to take what is that average price, depending, maybe I produce more class 3 milk than class 4 milk. Basically, it's going to weight that out to find that final class price. We're going to look at our revenue guarantee, take that yield adjustment, and then we're going to calculate at the end of the year, basically, what is those prices looked at based on the weighting factors that we have. We're going to calculate the indemnity. And the biggest thing to highlight here, again, and like I was talking about in these livestock programs, we're not currently, for the programs we're going to talk about today, cover death, loss, or damage to dairy, cattle, or any livestock for what we have currently. And then, like I said, the actual and expected prices. And then what we see, there's this program produces a milk production per cow that's published by the RMA. Basically, those are all going to be published. I mean, not actually what happens on your exact operation, but we're looking, like I said, again, at the records by AMS, NAS, and in the futures market as well. I go through a quick example here. Like I said, I won't highlight it too hard there, but we look at this producer in Tulare County, California, elects these applicable coverages. They have a $23,500 in milk revenue. We have a revenue guarantee. You take that yield adjustment on that production per cow. So what was expected at the beginning of the year versus what actually happened. We're going to take the actual milk revenue based on those prices from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So now we're at the end of the year. We see we had a little over $20,000 in actual milk revenue, and we ended up with a little over a $684 indemnity. Again, like I said, wanted to go through that pretty quick because I think these next two programs are what our guys really want to look in and highlight. I'm guessing we don't have any further questions. I'll keep going through here. Brandon, Tom, tell me if I'm different. But livestock gross margin. So we're looking at basically essentially what it says. We're looking at coverage against the loss of gross margin based on our beef cattle, our dairy cattle, or our swine. So that's going to be our value of our livestock or our value of our milk minus those feed costs. For hogs, we're looking at a 6-month period, and in cattle, we're looking at 11-month insurance period. There's a deductible that you're going to elect. So for our beef cattle, it's $0 to $150 a head. It goes in $10 increments. For swine, it's $0 to $20 in $2 increments. And in dairy, we're looking at basically 100 weights of milk, and that's from $0 to $2 a 100 weight, and you elect that in a 10-cent increment. So as the insured, you're going to select your deductible. You're going to select the share or how much percentage you own in the livestock, and then the targeted number of head that you have for each applicable month that you're planning on selling. And then we have a monthly actual and expected gross margins. Those are all based on the futures market. We'll talk about that here shortly. And again, kind of similar to DRP. So for LGM, our sales period begins on the Thursday of each week when those prices and rates are published on the website, on the RMA website, and then they end the next business day. The time, I think, is dependent upon what program you elect. Again, Thanksgiving comes around. Well, it's probably not going to be applicable for Thanksgiving because that's a federal holiday, and so they may not be on that day or any other federal holiday that falls on a Thursday. But that's how those sales periods begin. So when we talk about the futures market, this is essentially what we're looking at. We can see here on our beef cattle. So we have like calf finishing, which is our 550-pound weights from 550 pounds to slaughter. And then yearling finishing is basically when they're yearlings, a year old, and they go up to the finishing stage. Those are the things that we're covering in those categories. Of course, our dairy is pretty straightforward there. And then farrow to finish, that's basically from when those hogs are born to when we finish them out. So a lot of our vertically integrated guys there. Finishing is when those hogs are about 50 pounds up to finishing time. And then I was interested, I wasn't 100% sure on that SEW you see at the bottom. That stands for segregated early weaned pigs. So basically when they were weaned early from that 12-day to 21-day window up to slaughter age is what those different types are covering. But essentially when we're looking at LGM, we're looking at the futures market and we're subtracting basically what are those animals worth at one point in time minus the feed cost that it's taking. And then, so that's our, what is it expected to be versus at the end of the year, what did it actually come down to? And so market valuation is at the time or at that month that you're selling those animals. And so if I have calf finishing and I sell them in March, so I'm looking at that March month is what I'm looking at, or the nearest by futures market. And then feed cost. So we see corn for our beef cattle, and in dairy and swine, we implement soybean meal as well. And that feed cost, that next column, feed cost, a number of months before marketing. So again, if I sell my cattle in March, I'm looking at the March futures, or around that nearby time. I'm gonna go 4 months back, and what is the 4-month period prior for my corn, and then for our cattle side, we're looking at what did it actually cost feeder cattle. So basically, of course, calf finishing yearling to slaughter. I'm looking at about a 5-month window. And then for my calf finishing, we're looking at when they're 550 pounds. So about when they're 8 months, and it's going to take about 8 months to feed them out. So we're going back that many months back when we're looking at what it costs basically to have that calf from our starting place to the ending spot. Is what we're looking at there. So again, in summary, give you the big highlight, because I know that can get complicated. Basically, my expected. So what are we expected to look at the end of the year, or at the end of that animal's point, whenever it's time to harvest them or finish them out. And so we're going to take that. What does it look like it's going to be versus at that point in time? What is it actually looking at? Did the market drop? If it did, that's when this indemnity comes in handy. I feel like a good example will follow as well. So gross margin calculation, again, for our calf finishing guys, we're looking at 11.5 hundredweight, and we're going to multiply that by our live cattle futures. We're going to do this calculation. So we're looking at about 52 bushels of corn. We're going to multiply that by the corn futures, and then subtract that from 550 pounds multiplied by our feeder cattle futures. So again, like I talked about, we're looking at, for LGM, for calf finishing, we're looking at cattle at 5 weights to when they finish out. And so what was the price of that animal if I bought them at a 500 weight? And then how much cost is it going to take to feed that animal? And then what's my revenue at the end of the day when that animal is 1,150 pounds? And so 1,150 pound value, this is what he's worth now, or she's worth now. Subtract that from what that calf was worth at a 5 weight, subtract from what that animal ate. And like I said, how the program's set up, they're looking at roughly around 52 bushels. Yearling and finishing, pretty much the same exact calculations, except we're looking at different hundredweights. So again, they started as a year old and not as a 5 weight. And so that's going to increase to 750 pounds. What is the value if they're at a 7.5 weight there? And then they're probably not going to eat quite as much feed because you have a shorter time. So we're looking at 50 bushels instead. But they're going to gain a little more weight. So we're looking at about a 1,250 pound animal in comparison to the calf finishing. Dairy, milk production, and milk futures. And there's a calculation that we're looking at there. Basically, they got to convert the corn tons fed over to corn bushels to align with the futures market there, and then soybean meal tons fed. Dairy is actually one that there's calculations involved that you can read through the policy. And biggest thing is talk to your crop insurance agent about a lot of these different details. But you can look at those and like I said, actually on the dairy side, you get to apply how much corn or how much soybean you fed for that year. And as long as it's within a realm and a limitation, like I said, there's a lot of other information you can ask your crop insurance about on the dairy side. On our hog side, so we're looking at lean hog futures, and we'll talk a little more about this in the LRP, but you basically take what that hog's going to be, so a 260 pound weight, and then we're looking at what is that lean weight, so you multiply that by 0.74. And then we're going to subtract corn. They're hopefully going to eat around 12 bushels. And then soybeans, we're looking at, they're probably going to eat about a little over 138 pounds of soybeans. And so apply that to what those future markets are applied. Finishing, and then our SEW pigs, our segregated early wean pigs, those applicable details apply as well. So claim settlement, I'm going to take my gross margin again, and I'm going to take my expected gross margin to determine my guarantee. And that deductible that we elected at the beginning that we were talking about, I'm going to subtract and to get what my gross margin guarantee is. Again, number of head and then our 100 weights of milk are based on target marketings for each month. So how many am I looking at selling for that month? And so I'm going to calculate my indemnity gross margin guarantee, subtract what that actual gross margin is, multiplied by my share, and then the number of head or the 100 weights of milk that I produce for that month. So again, best way to look at it is an example. I feel like we have Custer County, Nebraska. We have a producer who has a farrow to finish hog operation, and he elects or she elects LGM for the August to January insurance period. So again, that's a 6-month period for on our swine side. They sold 25 head and targeted 25 head to be sold in November. They elect a $4 a head deductible and have a 100% share. The best thing about LGM is RMA does a great job at publishing through the AIB, the Actuarial Information Browser. And also there, I'll show you some good references as well that they publish this information on, where you don't have to worry about those calculations we were talking about as much. You can look at that because that's what it's derived from. But they publish and say, all right, your expected gross margin whenever you elected coverage is $67.50 a head. And then at the end of whenever for November per se, we're looking at $60.10 a head for our actual gross margin. So to calculate my guarantee, I take that $4 deductible that I elected and subtract it from the expected gross margin. So I'm looking at $63.50 a head. And I'm going to take that at the end of the year. Again, it's $60.10 was the actual gross margin. So I'm going to take the difference between my guarantee and what actually occurred. So I'm looking at $3.40 multiplied by my share and then multiplied by the number of head that I have. And for this example, I'm looking at an $85 indemnity. So that's LGM. Again, as we can highlight, that's a lot for our finishing operations. I'm going to go, Brandon, Tom, do we have any further questions, or y'all knocking them out of the park as we speak?
No additional questions.
Cool. So we'll go into livestock risk protection. I think this is where we're really highlighting today, and want to look at, especially for the guys we have on the call. So we're looking at coverage against declining prices over a given time period. So there's 13 weeks, 17 weeks, 21, 26, 30, 34, 39, 43, 47, or 52 week intervals that you can elect. And then that's applicable for fed cattle, feeder cattle, or swine. So coverage price ranges from 70 to 100% of our expecting ending value. And then you're going to select, so you're going to select your coverage level. You're going to select your share, which is how much ownership you have in the animals. Select number of head that we're covering. And then your target weight, we'll talk about that here shortly. We're looking at live weight on our cattle side and then lean weight for our swine. And then that however week interval period that you're looking at. Prices are based on futures market again, as well as AMS information. And these are published every day, every business day that are applicable business days. And then they end at 9 a.m. on the next business day or following on that Sunday. So going to our different types. For our feeder cattle guys, here recently, I'll drop down to that unborn steers and heifers, Brahman and dairy. That was recently applied about a few years back. So relatively new, but basically what that's helping is, all right, I'm a cow-calf operation, and it looks like I'm going to typically have, if I run 100 mother cows, I'm going to have about 90 calves every year. And so I can technically insure those animals, quote unquote, unborn before they are actually on the ground, and cover them throughout that period. It just, like I said, and I'm looking at, for a typical cow-calf operation, we're looking at weaning them or backgrounding them for a little bit. So we're looking at about 100 to 599 pounds is around the proximity of our target weight. And again, like I said, they break it out in Brahmins. So if you have any Brahmin influence, I believe weight ones and weight two. So weight ones, 100 to 599 pounds. So that's our typical guys who are weaning them. Maybe you do a 30 or 45 day backgrounding and then sell them off. Or then we have some of our guys, maybe you're backgrounding them longer than that, and you're kind of selling them more to a finishing operation or to to a guy who's only wanting to keep them for about 30 to 60 days before they send them to a finishing operation. So our target weights, we're looking at 600 to 1,000 pounds, or maybe you do a really good job of producing your animals, and our winning weights are a lot higher than that 600-pound mark. But that's where they set the categories between weight 1 and weight 2. Steers and heifers, again, they break those out because there's a price difference there. Brahmins, again, that's usually highlighted because there's a slight price difference when we look at the data. And then our dairy animals as well are applicable. And then I highlighted unborn. Fed cattle, so that's our finishing operation, steers and heifers between 1,000 and 1,600 pounds. And then lean weight, again, it's our swine. So our lean weight, which is our target weight, is anywhere from 140 to 260 pounds. To calculate lean weight, you just take the live weight and multiply it by a factor of 0.74. All right, claim settlement. An indemnity is due whenever the ending value is below your coverage price. And so how I do the calculation, basically that expected ending value multiplied by my coverage level is what that coverage price is. So when I'm calculating an indemnity, I take my number of head multiplied by that target weight that I set. Price difference. So the coverage price, subtract from what actually happened. So our actual ending value. Total loss. So I'm going to take my total pounds multiplied by that difference that in price. And then I have an indemnity, which is that total loss multiplied by my share. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple process. Again, like I said, we're covering price on this side. So again, go back to that same example. I'm running a cow-calf operation. Maybe I'm electing steers and heifers. Weight 1s is what I'm looking at. Have 90 calves hit the ground. We're looking at I got lucky this year and had 45 steers and 45 heifers. I want to cover them for X amount of weeks because if the price declines, I'm going to field that on one side. And so maybe there's a little bit of coverage available there. If that price, whatever the case may be, something happens to the markets and we see that price decline, I can be protected from those unexpected things that occur. So our LRP example, I'm going to go out to Death Smith County, and I'm a producer there, and I elect LRP with the following elections. So that 34-week endorsement, I'm going to elect. I'm going to have about 50 steers and heifers that are going to hit the ground, that are going to be alive, and I'm going to mark it at the end of the year. And then I'm looking at a target weight of 550 pounds. I have all 100% share in those animals, and I'm going to elect a 90% coverage level. So this given day that I elect this coverage, the expecting ending value is a little over $191 a hundredweight. So I'm going to take that $191.40 and multiply that by my coverage level of 90%, and I'm going to get $172.20, little over 26 cents per hundredweight coverage price. So at the end of the year, like I said, whatever the case may be, the markets went down and my actual ending value is $161, or a better way to put this is $1.61 a pound, $161.46 for a hundredweight. So I see a loss there. So the calculation, I'm going to take those 50 head that I'm going to be selling. I have a target weight of 550 pounds. So I'm going to take that and I'm looking at 275,000 pounds, 27,500 pounds of actual production that I'm producing that year. I'm going to take my coverage price, so that $172, and subtract the actual ending value from that. So that's a little over $161. And I have a loss of, you're looking at about a 10 cent per pound loss. I'm going to take that 10 cent per pound loss, multiply it by the total pounds that I produced for that year. So I'm looking at $2,970. Take that, multiply it by my share, and I'm looking at an indemnity of a little less than $3,000. So that's essentially how LRP works. Again, it's a price decline. Those that are involved in the futures market, I know you know what like a put is. This is very, very similar to how a put is structured in the futures market. Except there's a lot of good benefits as well that we can see from this as the example shows. that, like I said, again, it helps a lot whenever we're looking, no telling what the markets can do. It's always $1 million question. What are they going to do 7 months from now whenever I'm marketing my animals? And so this is a great way to cover yourself from a price decline. That's going to be it from as far as programs are concerned. On our resources, I wanted to talk, I previously mentioned RMA does a great job of publishing for LRP and LGM these different reports. So you can look at, what are the premium rates? What does it look at this coverage level? And some different applicable processes for each day that you're looking at, because this changes on a day-by-day basis. Or as far as business days are concerned, there's a link there that you can look at. Again, I want to highlight again the importance of a crop insurance agent. We'll talk about that here shortly. RMA has a great locator if you don't have a crop insurance agent and need to find somebody. Again, RMA does a great job on their locator. It's pretty easy to use. You can find nearby agents. Again, your local farmers and ranchers around your area are a great resource as well. Kim, I know Kim probably dropped off, but she likes to say you want to have a heart of a teacher. You want to have a crop insurance agent that has the heart of a teacher, because they can make this process really easy, or they can also make it a little more challenging. If they continue to teach you and show you how these things work, it's usually very helpful to know what you're actually what risk you're managing for the cost and risk and benefits that are involved with it. RMA also has livestock insurance plans summary page that you can go to. You can click on that. There's some fact sheets. There's the policies. You can go through those and dive more in details. I know I dived a little here and a little there, and we don't have quite the time to cover all the ins and outs of these different programs. But like I said, your crop insurance agent and these resources are great to look and dive in more about if you're interested in any of those applicable programs. I also want to touch real quickly. Again, we're based in College Station, Texas, and Texas A&M. We work a lot with the Department of Ag Economics as well as the entrepreneurship, McFerrin Center of Entrepreneurship, and Syracuse University is the host of this, but Texas A&M as well as other, I think there's 8 entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans or schools that have this program. But basically, even if you're looking and getting into farming and ranching, or you're starting another different business, have that entrepreneurial spirit, this is a great opportunity. It's a 30-day online course, and then there's a 9-day residency. And they also have more of a streamlined, that's a quicker program as well that's available that you can look into. I believe some of these coming up for one of the universities is coming soon, the deadline for that. So be sure, like I said, if this is interested, it's no cost training by some great faculty and staff that are at these different schools. I know like Florida State, LSU, University of Missouri, there's others as well. Again, the host site is Syracuse University, and Texas A&M is one as well that have this opportunity to use. Just wanted to share that for our veteran farmers and ranchers. Give you a quick summary on our winning at risk management. We've back in January, it's crazy it's been that long ago, we had our Crop Insurance 101 webinar. Then in February and March, Kim Harris, myself, and another analyst went out to Tennessee, North Carolina, and Texas and presented Crop Insurance 101 in person. Had great feedback from them, and that developed this winning at risk management series to target. And so part 1, I talked about whole farm revenue protection and our micro farm programs. Part 2 was rainfall indexes, so apiculture and PRF. Part 3 was 2 weeks ago, and we talked about annual and perennial APH programs. So those are yield-based programs that are happening on your operation, mainly for row crops as well as our tree crops, and grapes are included as well under that. So had a lot of great opportunities with these different series. And today we have part 4 of our livestock program. Again, these will be published on the Farmer Veteran Coalition YouTube channel. I believe part 1s, 2, and 3 have all been published, and part 4 will be as well. And this summer, we're going to release some training modules that will be a little more, if you're trying to sit there and say, what was that we were talking about, the benefits that veteran farmers and ranchers have? Well, you can click on that module, and it will give you a little 2, 3, 4 minute video that talk about the different benefits for veterans. or what was that they talked about LRP how does the price work, or what is it about target weights? Well, you can be able to click on that and go through that a little more modular base to refresh your mind on or want to learn more about instead of sitting through and waiting on an hour and a half webinar to try to figure out what was that one little detail we talked about in that webinar. With that being said, I want to thank you all again for the opportunity to come and speak to you all. It's been a great opportunity. I've had a great opportunity, and it's been a blessing to work on this Winning at Risk Management series and work with the Farmer Veteran Coalition. Again, I want to say to our veterans, thank you for your service, and to all of you that produce livestock or crops or whatever the case may be, thank you for being a part of this great industry that provides the food, fuel, and fiber for the world. Thank you enough for all that you do, and we will open it up if there's any further questions and open the floor there. Thank you again for your time.